Hi everyone, I'm Rika Rose.
And I'm Saskia, and we're from the Family Creative Learning team at the MIT Media Lab.
We're so excited to have you here and to be working with you in these next 4 online workshops to think about how you can adapt family creative learning in your community. So if you haven't had a chance, please say hi, hello, hey in the text chat that's right by this window. In the meantime, for those of you who are very new to family creative learning, what is it? It's an out-of-school time program where we invite whole families to create and learn together as designers and inventors using creative technologies like Scratch and Makey Makey. We especially work with communities that have families that may not have backgrounds in computing or histories with it. And we work with community centers like Boys and Girls Club and whatnot. And these online workshops are an opportunity for us to connect with other educators and youth program staff to adapt it into their community.
So you're watching a pre-recorded video right now, but Rika Rose and I are here with you in the chat. So if you have any questions while you're watching this video, feel free to write them in the chat and we can answer them with you.
So what is here exactly? We're using the Unhangout platform, which was developed here at the Media Lab, and it's built on top of the Google Hangout platform. So actually, if you hadn't had a chance to install the Google Hangout plugin, there's a link in this window. You might have to restart your browser, but that's okay.
We'll still be here.
Yeah, we'll still be here. So, great. And one thing to know is that it's fairly new, so you might run into glitches, but it's been working really well for us so far. So, what's the structure of these 4 online workshops? What can you expect in these next 4 weeks? So, we split up these workshops kind of using the facilitator guide as a guide. We'll talk more about what the facilitator guide is in a moment. So this first week today is about imagining and preparing your family creative learning. Next week, we're going to talk about preparing a little bit more and facilitating your FCL. And then on February 4th, we're going to talk about the first 2 family workshops, 1 and 2. And then we'll end on February 11th talking about the last 3, 4, and 5.
Great. So before we jump in, I'm just going to give you a quick tour of our tools that we'll be using throughout the resources. So throughout the workshops. So this is the Unhangout platform, which we encourage you to bookmark right now for easy access later on in the weeks. Next up, I'll be showing you Google+, which is an online community that we set up where you can post resources, ask questions. Rika Rose and I will be posting updates in the community throughout the weeks, and so you can use this community however you'd like to connect to each other. So just a quick browse the community. In the middle, you'll see some posts from us and from others, and on the right, there are some quick links to the Unhangout link, the facilitator guide, and the family creative learning page. And the facilitator guide is my favorite resource. Rika Rose and I designed it together, and it outlines almost everything you'll need to know to create your own family creative learning workshop. So we'll be referencing the guide throughout the weeks and encourage you to also be looking through the guide and asking questions. So if you haven't downloaded the guide, you can do so now on the Google+ page. Great.
So what's happening today?
So next we'll be talking a bit about imagining and preparing your own family creative learning workshops. And then after that, we'll jump into discussion groups where we will break out and ask questions and discuss the content that Rika Rose and I went over today.
Cool. So let's talk about imagining and preparing your family creative learning. So like I mentioned before, it's a program where we invite whole families to come together and they can learn creative technologies like the Scratch programming language and the Makey Makey invention kit. And it consists of 5 workshops that happen once a week across the evening. We start with dinner, and they're about 2 hours each. And when we designed this program, we had kind of 3 aspirations and motivations when we put this together, and kind of it helped us think about our design decisions. So these 3 aspirations are 1, we really believe that everyone can play a role. So often parents wonder, with technology permeating so many aspects of our lives, what role they can play. But we really believe that they can play so many roles, from providing encouragement, asking genuine questions and sharing ideas, and connecting them to new opportunities. There's so many things that parents can do. And with kids who are so curious and excited about technology, they're learning so many things at the same time. And these are things that they can share with their family and learn how to support each other in these activities. So the second thing is we really believe in learning by creating. And we believe that people learn best when they're making things that they care about and they're sharing it with others. And we have tools like Scratch and Makey Makey that make that possible to do that with computing. And 3, we really believe in building a learning community. When you bring all these families together who are in the same neighborhood, in the same room, you have these great opportunities to connect them, to show them their shared interests, and help them see the ways that they can support one another, and ultimately try to build a learning community as they pursue their shared interests in computing. So these are our 3 aspirations in designing this program. We want to learn a bit more about your aspirations. So in the Google Plus community, we wrote 3 reflection prompts for you. 1, what does creative learning mean to you? 2, why are you interested in engaging your community? And 3, what are your goals for yourself, for your work, and for your community? And actually we thought, let's try to answer one of those questions right now in the chat. If you're so willing, it'd be great for you to answer the 3rd question. What are your goals? We'll give you a minute or 2 right now with some music to help you answer that question.
And just so everybody knows, we'll be posting these reflection questions each week in the Google Plus community. So this is something that you can look forward to next time as well.
Yeah, and these are supposed to be a conversation piece as well.
To help you think about your own practice too.
Cool.
Great.
So we'll stop talking.
Great. Thank you so much for taking some time to write down your goals. I'm sure they're awesome. So let's take a second to jump into thinking about preparing your family creative learning workshops. And we're sure you have a ton of questions about how to even make this happen. So when Rick Rose and I were thinking about somebody coming in to make their own workshops for the first time, we realized that there were 4 aspects that were really important to think about. There are plenty of other aspects to think about as well, but these 4 are what we're going to focus on in the next 2 workshops. So first is setting, which is where will you host your workshops? And the second one is resources, which is what will you need and how will you get it? And then we'll think about help, which is where you can find facilitators and how can you work together. And then the 4th thing is families. How do you even get your families through the door? So today we're going to be talking about the first 2, setting and resources, and then next week we'll talk more about help and families, but you can ask any questions you'd like when we break out into our breakout groups later. Great. Okay, so Rick Rose, you've been here from the beginning and you've seen a variety of settings. What are some questions that you think about when you're setting up your own family creative learning workshops?
Yeah, that's typically one of the, there's lots of questions to think about right away, but I find that setting shapes so many other decisions that you're about to make as well, because setting can determine what resources you'll have access to, how easy it will be to kind of connect with parents and follow up with them. A setting could determine what other connections you can bridge to kind of pull in people or resources. And every setting has kind of their own pros and cons in a way. Once we did it at a school, and the school was really on board and helped us recruit families, and they did robocalls, and they had a whole system of communication with parents already, and that was really helpful, and we got about 60 people to come. But at the end of the workshops, the families are like, this is awesome, where should we go next? And we didn't really know where else they could take it, because at the end of the workshop with the school, we had to break down the workshop space. And so then we also tried community centers of different kinds, and one was a Boys and Girls Club. And what's neat there is that the kids could continue using the computers and still have access to different community center staff after the workshops were over. But it's a Boys and Girls Club, and so the parents couldn't, it wasn't so easy for the parents to just show up and say like, hey, I want to use the computers. It's the Boys and Girls Club. But and so we've also done a community center and a housing development. And that was interesting because that was the family space already. Like they were already going there for different programming and services, and also just to use it if it was open and free. So that's also been a really interesting space. And throughout, like, depending on the space that the setting had, that would like determine kind of how many people we could have. But in general, like whatever setting you decide to do, there's some kind of key things we always try to think about, like how functional is the space, like what kind of resources does it have, how easy is it to configure so that you can set up this creative space where it's easy to collaborate and hear each other's ideas. We always like to have a central table so that people can sit around it. And also how can you create that safe emotional space, to help people be open and vulnerable when they're trying out new ideas and experimenting with things. So those are just some of the things that we've been thinking about, and we try to document that in the guide as well.
Rigorous has posted some questions for you to consider when you're thinking through planning out your own space and setting in our Google Plus community.
Cool. So let's move on to thinking about resources. What are some of the questions that kind of people need to think about to get that started?
Yeah, some of the questions that we considered when we were planning our own workshops were what technologies we have, what craft materials we have on hand, if there are people that we can connect to in our community that might have some resources that we don't have, and how to connect with them.
Yeah, there might be already some in the setting that you plan to use, but there might be like a local maker space that has some makey-makeys or would be willing to kind of partner to get some makey-makeys together. What else can people do if they need to find kind of funding for to gather some of these materials?
I would suggest reaching out to local foundations to see if there's money to fund EdTech endeavors.
Yeah, interesting too, like as you write proposals and whatnot, feel free to use a lot of the language in the guide to one question that people often ask us is like, how do you advocate for this, and how can I talk about this as something that's really important and needed, and feel free to just take whatever language you want for the guide to help you to do that as well.
Another thing to consider is food. And food is such an important part of family creative learning, and we took a lot of care to kind of think about what kind of food we're going to have at the workshops. And we took some time to reach out to local people to see if there were donations that could be made.
And something we also think about with the food is like we try to keep it healthy as well, because we think like the kind of food and the quality of food kind of communicates something as well. Like, for example, we don't have soda. We try to have juice that doesn't have too much sugar. And also, like, what are things that the families might be interested in? Like, one time we had a lot of families that were Dominican, and they really loved this Dominican restaurant, and we ordered from there, and it became such a conversation piece during the workshops.
And in a few workshops, we also asked families what they might like that we could look into for the following workshop. Another thing to consider are the design journals, which are one of my favorite parts of family creative learning.
Yes, Saskia was really helpful in like putting the design journal together. Someone actually asked us an interesting question about the design journals. And actually, before I pose that question, if you haven't had a chance to look through the guide, design journals are kind of a resource that we give to family members that they can use to follow along in the workshops, write their reflections, kind of keep all the handouts together that go through the activities step by step. And the question that we got about them was like, do we hand out the design journal week to week, or do we give it to families altogether? And more recently, we handed it all together to them. And at first, we were a little worried that they might go ahead of the workshops, but that's okay if they're excited and they want to keep going. But one thing to think about also is, do we let them take it home?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we struggled with, and actually we decided not to have them take it home until the workshops were over, because we were afraid that they might get lost and logistically it might get complicated. But there's a missed opportunity. So if they want to keep working on it at home, the design journal can be a really useful tool for that. Things to think about.
Yeah. It's all about what works best for your space in your workshop and your families.
Cool. Well, I think, is there anything more that we want to discuss before we break out into our small groups?
I think we're ready.
Cool. So you must be wondering, what is this breakout group? And the Unhangout platform will help us do that. So underneath this video, you'll see different sessions with the name of a facilitator. There's me and Saskia, and we also brought in 2 of our fellow facilitators as well, who have also worked on family creative learning with us and who are on the team. Franklin, who has been a community partner and has worked in the Computer Clubhouse Network and the Boys and Girls Club here in Boston. He'll be one of the facilitators. And also Karina Lynn, she's also been on our team and been a facilitator at the workshops. And so how we're going to split this up is that if you are ready to go, you've got a plan, you've got a setting in mind, but you just have lots of details to work out, come to mine or Saskia's session. If you're still kind of unsure and you're trying to figure out, is family creative learning for me in my community, go to Franklin or Karina's session. And then in a moment, we're going to break. This video is going to end, and what you need to do is to join those sessions. So unfortunately, because it's built on top of Hangout, there's only a limited number of people that can go to any session. If the one that you wanted to go to is full, just go to another one, and really you can ask us any question. And if you don't have a chance to ask your question, the Google Plus community is where we can continue the conversation.
Yep. And just one more quick thing before we go is that we're going to be making these videos week by week. So if you have any suggestions for us for things you'd like to know or things that we can improve on our end, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, this is a continuing experiment, and we continue to learn about how we can help and support you adapt family creative learning through this kind of online format. So we really look forward to it.
Okay, ready for the breakout session?
I am so ready. All right, we'll talk to you again soon, this time in real time. Thanks, everyone.